Hello guys, welcome to my channel, AfributionTV. My name is Chukwuedo, I'm your host, and I'm going to dive in quickly. Today I'll be talking about something that's very, very recurrent in the African society today, which is the trend of, Japa. If you are Nigerian, I assume you know what I'm talking about. Personally I've been in Europe for about 5 years, just yesterday, a few days, I guess. And from my personal experience, I know that there are loads and loads of people who are currently thinking at this moment to leave the shores of Africa and then, go over to Europe, America, Australia, etc., etc., in search for, better life, better payments, earning conditions, etc., etc. I absolutely understand, we have different motivations as to why we want to emigrate, from the motherland, to our various countries of destination. But before you make that move, I would like to share my experience and also share my opinion on many factors that need to be considered, and of course, after this video, if you still wish, to go ahead to make that move, please, by all means, do so. So without wasting so much of your time, I have some bullet points. Yeah, I came with my jotter in order to guide me on this particular episode. So I have my jotter here, and I have some points that I think is very, very necessary for you to consider before you make this move. So the first question that I have here says, who should come? And under that, I have different bullet points, which is age, your marital status, your economic status, and then other extenuating circumstances. So quickly, I'm just going to jump in. Look, I understand that Africa has its plethora of challenges. I acknowledge that, obviously. I'm from Nigeria myself, and of course we know for the longest we've been having different issues, from insecurity to kidnapping to corruption, and then most recently election malpractice. I understand, however, what we must consider is that despite these challenges, we cannot deny the fact that many people are actually still better off in Africa, because they have, for example, very good jobs that are actually highly paying. They have assets, they have landed properties, they have businesses, and then they have very, very strong, family ties in Africa. And frankly speaking, most of them are very, very comfortable. Like they are doing well relatively, as Mr. Macaroni would say. So I'm going to just share my opinion on different things that I think you should consider, especially as regards these bullet points. So first of all, from my experience in Europe, I personally think that anybody who is above 40 years of age, 40, 45, I sincerely would not, encourage such people to make the move of, relocating abroad, because frankly speaking, coming abroad means that you are about to start all over again, whether you like it or not. It doesn't really matter how much experience or how much advice you've gotten from people. The moment you get into a new country, you have to start all over again. You need to start the documentation process, getting your tax identification number, looking for an accommodation. You are basically a novice in another man's land, and that experience can actually be very, very very stressful. And so people who are 45 and above, I sincerely do not encourage, except in situations where, for example, you are a highly skilled person. Maybe you're a programmer, or you're a developer, you are a digital marketer, you are into maybe data analysis, etc., etc. I'm talking about very, very highly sought after skills. Then in that case, maybe, when you have a job offer, from the receiving country. You already have a job offer, you already have a letter, and then you just need to, pack your stuffs, get into the country. And most times, these companies actually facilitate your accommodation. They get a place for you so you can stay. And then after a while, obviously, if you decide to leave this apartment or accommodation, you can easily get your own. But away from such circumstances, I strongly, do not advise that you make that move, especially because you are 45. In another 15 years, you're going to be 60. Your bones will become brittle. You're going to be, it's nature. So there's no way you can actually run from it. So I sincerely would not advise, except in situations again where you already have a job offer, like everything on, on everything on pen and paper. You just need to move, take your things, and everything is already set to receive you. But away from that, I sincerely do not advise. So, who are those that I advise? As regards age, anything from 20, 21, 22. Yes, especially if you have concluded your first degree in Africa. It could be in Nigeria, it could be in Ghana, it could be in Ivory Coast, wherever you are. This is because it is much easier for you to come to Europe, do your masters, and then you can easily integrate into the system. I'm talking from personal experience now. Obviously this is not the case for everybody. But from my personal experience, it is much more easier for you to come do your masters. Most times 1 year, 6 months, 1 year, 6 months, and 2 years maximum. So you spend a shorter time going to school in Europe or in America or in Australia, and then you're able to get into the system, start making money. And most importantly is that you still have some, 20 years, 25 years ahead of you for you to actually work, make some money, and then hopefully, establish yourself. But I also understand that there are people who sometimes send their kids to Europe and America. I do not advise that, especially when these kids, come over to the West and they are quite very, very young, like 16, 17, tender, and the parents do not come with them. So it means that you are basically sending your teenager to to a foreign land without necessarily having somebody to supervise them, to guide them. The system is a very, very difficult system, especially for people of color. Whether you like it or not, it's a thing, it's a reality. There's racism, there's discrimination. So the stress level sometimes can be very, very daunting. And, I strongly do not advise, except in a situation where, of course, the parents also live in the receiving country, and then, their kids can actually go to school or can navigate the system through the guidance and the supervision of the parents. So that about that. Anything from 45 above, coming to start all over again, I do not advise it. But of course, I know that there are exceptions to the rule, which I'm going to touch when I get to the economic factors. So secondly, your marital status. So for marital status, I always advise that it is so much easier when you are yet to be married, for you to make that bold move, because, it's a very, very uncertain move. You don't know what you're going to meet. You don't know the challenges that you're going to encounter. So making that move when you're married, and especially when you're trying to bring your family all at once, especially when, you are not doing so well financially or economically, and then you are thinking to make that move as a married person, I do not advise that. I strongly disapprove, because even as a single guy, it is so stressful. Now imagine somebody who has a family, who has mouth to feed. Because in Europe, I'm going to use Europe as a case study, the expenses are actually fixed, whether you like it or not. So for example, in Africa, if you are living in a 2-bedroom, let's say on the mainland, I'm talking about Nigeria now, you're staying on the mainland, for example, you're paying about 400,000 naira for your yearly rent, the possibility that you're paying for water is very slim because I know the system. If you have a borehole in the compound, then it would mean that you only pay your house rent, and of course you pay your light bill, etc., etc. But it's not typical for people to pay water bill, for example, in Nigeria. So it is much easier for you to just call up your friend that, oh man, I'm stranded, and I like to come over, just to spend the night before I continue my journey tomorrow. It's so much more easier for people to be accommodating in Africa. You know why? I don't have to pay for water. So of course you can come, you can shower, you can do all your necessities. You can wash your clothes, and there are still houses that do not use prepaid meters. So it means that your light consumption is not actually metered, so it's not measured. So if you have a fixed amount that you pay, sometimes it could be way lower than what you actually consume, So these very, very little factors make a very huge difference when you come to Europe or America. If you sneeze, you're going to pay. I'm telling you the facts. So it's difficult for people to receive strangers in their homes, no matter how close the person is, visitors and all that, to spend 1, 2, 3, 4 days, because the water consumption is going to increase, the electricity consumption is going to increase, the gas consumption is going to increase. Your internet, if you're lucky, you're paying a fixed amount, so you're much more lucky. So this is the reason why you come in as a married person, except if you have excess funds, to keep you for at least 3 months or 6 months floating before you're able to eventually, hit the ground rolling and, hopefully secure a job. So I do not advise that married couples who are struggling, because for some funny reason that I don't understand, you are struggling in Africa as a married couple, but you believe that all of a sudden, everything is gonna be transformed if you go to Europe. I mean, people who make that move that are married, what they do usually is the husband or the wife, they go first, and then after a while they bring the family over. But I can tell you, it's not that easy, and most times it doesn't even go as planned. I'm going to leave case studies for another day, where the husband goes and life becomes really difficult. They are working, they are making money, but maybe they are using somebody else's documentations to work. So the money goes to the account of the person who owns the papers, and then obviously at the end of the month, maybe after working 1,500 euros, the person gives you 500 euros, and that's not the agreement. So you're just in a vicious circle, and you're explaining to your wife, she doesn't want to understand. The long and short is, in my sincere opinion, it breaks the family, and the possibility that your family is going to be broken is very, very high. I have to tell you the very, very hard truth. The possibility that your family gets broken is very, very high, because Europe and America is full of uncertainties. There is no guarantee that the way you planned it, that it's going to go exactly that way. So my point is, it is much more easier for you as a single person to come, make all your mistakes, get your experiences, and then, eventually you get used to the system. You know that you're not keeping anybody back home in Africa, your wife, your kids, etc., etc., because the frustration builds up over time. It's a very, very terrible situation. Case studies that I've seen, some ended well, some did not end, most do not end well, so, I mean, if you want to do it, you're free, but, just my personal opinion, I sincerely would not consider, I wouldn't consider that if I were you. And then to the third one, which is the most important, economic situation. Now, I understand that 90% of people who actually migrate, it is due to economic situations. Yes, because I have attended classes on interculturality, migration, and stuff like that. So yes, I know what I'm talking about from experience and from the literature, from the existing literature. Most people migrate in order to improve their economic conditions. So, economic conditions. There is a trend that I really want to advise against. If you are somebody who's in Africa, you have a good job, highly paying, which is relative, obviously. If you're in Nigeria, if you're earning anything from 400,000 naira, 450, 500,000, you're actually earning well. I dare say that, even if I know that sometimes we have these people who just, throw figures around and say, oh, how much be 400,000? How much is 400,000 is nothing. That's a lie. That's a big lie, Except for people who are constantly trying to live above their means, 400,000 naira is good money. Is good money. You can live comfortably with your family. Obviously, I'm not talking about a very, very huge family, but, mother, child, maybe 2 children. If you are living within your means, you'll be more than comfortable. You'll be able to do a lot with that salary. You'll be able to save. You'll be able to buy a car. I know that. So, my point is this. If you are somebody who is doing relatively good in Africa, when you're doing good in Africa, you know you're doing good. You're earning well. We have guys who are in the oil sector, oil and gas. We have people who have, agricultural businesses. They have farms. They run poultries, etc., etc., snail farming, etc., fish ponds. These people make good money. That is enough to, to cater to their needs. So, I understand the urge to always want to throw everything away and then move to the West. But please think about this very, very carefully. If you want to know, you can ask your friends who have been in Europe and America. Just call them up and ask them, hey man, can I borrow, let's say, 10,000 euros from you? And then see their reaction. So that should give you an idea that all that glitters is not gold. Because sometimes we in the West, we don't really tell those back home the truth. Because we know we are here, we know, you're working, but majority of the people who are working, they're only working to pay their bills and then, get some little change, to put in their bank account, 200 euros, 300 euros, 400, 500 bucks. I'm talking about the majority. I'm not talking about the minority who are, doing relatively well, which is still, a handful. I'm talking about the majority, the vast majority of motherland people in Europe and America. Frankly speaking, they are not on the list of top earners. So, if you have landed properties, you have a good job, you have assets back home, please do not throw everything and then head to Europe or America. Because I can guarantee you the possibility that you will be able to acquire all over again the things that you sold is very, very slim. I think it was 3 weeks ago I saw a video on Instagram about a young man from Nigeria who sold his property, sold everything, went to the UK, only to end up at the train station. And he was making a video regretting deeply how he sold his properties and everything just to move to the UK. And then he got there, obviously he was disillusioned. He was at the train station, he said, and he was saying, I think he was speaking Yoruba, and he said, it is not even certain that he will get a place to sleep that night. He was out in the cold. So please, think about it carefully. My advice would be, take 1 month, take 2 months. Go to this country that you think you want to migrate to. Talk to people, integrate, observe, ask people questions, and then you will see the true reality of what Africans are actually going through in most of these countries. And then you can actually tell that you are doing way, way better back in your home country, more than those who are, in quotes, in the diaspora. So please, if you know you have a good economic situation in Africa, and you know that your life is not being threatened in any way, because I know people give that excuse a lot. Oh, security and all that. Look, I understand security issues, but come on, this is something that is everywhere. We only have it at different levels. So there are places in Nigeria that are relatively safe, frankly speaking. Even in the so-called Borno states, there are places that I believe that are practically safe. And in Lagos, in Port Harcourt, in Abuja, in Delta, I think the problem most times is that people always want to stay in those places, the big cities, in quotes, Port Harcourt, Lagos, Abuja, most of the times. But there are other places, Ogun State, you have Delta State, Asaba, which is really, 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 really developing at a very, very rapid rate. So please do not throw the things that you have back home just because you want to migrate to Europe and America. It might not turn out the way you had planned, and that would be a very, very huge regret for you, because now you are stuck in the system. There is nothing to go back to in Africa. So please always have a plan B. Do not sell your stuffs. Yeah, you can get a loan, you can use it as collateral, etc. Or if possible, you can take from your personal funds, go there, spend some time. If it works out, fine and good. If it doesn't work out, you have something back home. So that's that about the economic situation. And then the final thing I'm going to talk about is security. Yeah, this is one of the major excuses that people give, which I understand. I've met many people here who are from Gambia, from Gambia, people from Guinea-Bissau, people from Angola, etc., etc. Of course, some of them had to go through that very, very torture, that very difficult path, through the desert and all that. I mean, if you're African, you have an idea what I'm actually talking about. You can imagine the kind of experience they had to go through, the kind of things they had to see, the kind of difficulties, the uncertainty, the risk that they had to take, And frankly speaking, when I spoke to some of them, not all of them were actually in risk situations, Not all of them were actually in risk situations. Some of them wanted to leave just because they wanted to leave. They had friends, who had successfully made it through that path, and then they just decided, to come over. But for those who are genuinely in risk situations, for whatever reason, because of your religion, your faith, family problems, or ethnic crises, etc., etc., I understand, and by every means, you can make the move. But if you know that you're not in any risk situation, it is much more, easier for you to get by in Africa, because look, I understand there might not be so much money in the system, but Africans are naturally kind people. They are generous. It's almost impossible for you to wake up and then you ask 4, 5, 6 people on the road that you're hungry and you will not get something. But in Europe, it's a very, very tough and very, very hostile system. In order for me not to take so much of your time, I'm going to stop here today. And on our next episode, I'm going to talk about another very, very important topic, which is for those people who wish to use the student route, like I used, and it's the route that I always recommend to anybody. I'm going to be giving a list of countries that I have researched, and that I think are good options, especially for West Africans. We have this penchant to always think about the UK, the US, Canada, etc. But there are other countries in Europe that I think can actually give very, very great results. So I'm going to be talking about that in our next episode. So thank you so far. If you are a new subscriber, if you're a new listener, please consider subscribing to my channel. And if you're a returning subscriber, thank you so much for always showing us the necessary support. So please subscribe. You can follow my personal account on Instagram, pocketamigo, or you can follow the channel account on Instagram, Afribution. We're also on Facebook, Afribution, and it's bye for now, and thank you very much. Catch you on the very next one.